Okay.
Yeah, I would just want to start recording on this now that I've done all my rambling.
Okay, I'm gonna
and
turn
live
off
stream
my
it.
video. Yeah. Just for being I'm sharing, sometimes it slows it down if I'm sharing my video. So
and I just have to
I'm
find my
gonna
record button, and we're good to go. And thank you all for joining us today for our roundtable discussion on ROI. And Steve Lee is going to be taking it away and moving from there. So Steve, just go ahead, reintroduce yourself, because some of these people are new.
Sure.
And we'll roll from there.
Sure. My name is Steve Lee. I was one of the co-founders of Allen Interactions 28 years ago. Worked with Dr. Allen before we had started, when he was at Authorware that became Macromedia that got bought by Adobe. Right now, I am the Chief Delivery Officer. So I am in charge of all of operations for Allen Interactions. And at one time I was head of sales and marketing, so I kind of flipped back and forth. And as Rich was saying earlier, I brought him in 25 years ago. He was working with a company that had a training center in Chicago. We opened up a Chicago office, and he's been with us ever since. So thanks for setting us up, Rich. At a high level, the agenda is, just quick introductions. Just, we've already heard some of you say what town you're in, but now we've got people, what town, if you feel comfortable saying what company you're working with, and, what you focus on. We assume it might be instructional, it might be from the technology standpoint, project management, just kind of at a high level. Then let's just go around the room and do that really quickly after I go over the agenda. Then we're going to talk about, from our interactions, what we think ROI means and what you should focus on. And then to us, maximizing resources. I mean, resources might be money, it might be people, it might be time, but we have a way of doing an analysis, a way of prioritizing things, a way of blending across different modalities and using our process to make sure that we get the most out of every minute and every dollar that we spend. And the big one is, how do you keep things on scope? Because scope creep is the easiest way to get ROI to go in the tank. So from there, we'll just jump over to introductions. So I introduced myself. I know Rich has introduced himself. So I'll go down the Hollywood squares the way it's showing on my screen. So Susan T., if you'd like to go first, give a quick introduction, that would be great.
Sure. I'm Susan Thompson. I'm outside of Indianapolis in a little bitty town. I work for Kohler Partners, which is a women's business enterprise. We're a real small group focused on training and project management. We tend to fall in both fields with our experience and our certifications, et cetera. And just looking forward to seeing what all I can glean from all this. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Ming, you're next on my list.
Yeah, so I'm from Toronto, Canada. So yeah, I'm an instructional designer. And yeah, I've been following our interactions for a while. So I'm excited to learn. Thank you.
Thanks. Marcus?
Hi, I'm Marcus Branch. I'm an instructional designer at Delaware North, located in Buffalo, New York. We've used Allen Interactions before for a lot of our customer service training, and I was interested in the academy piece to kind of deepen my skill set as a professional development. And Rich invited me here to talk about ROI.
Okay, great. Sherry?
Hi, I am Sherry B.D. Smithke, and I manage a training team at an IT company outside of Lansing, Michigan.
All right. And Burl?
Hi, everyone. Burl McIlvain. I'm an instructional designer as well, mainly working in tech. And I've been a recent student of Allen Academy and ACIP and the David Merrill course. So anytime I get an email from Allen Academy, I'm always interested in these webinars to just continue the learning. And ROI is such a pervasive subject. I feel like we're kind of, in many regards down to the level 1, level 2 kind of Kirkpatrick stuff. So how do we get into the, true meaning of the train? Did it move the actual needle? So interested in what y'all have to say.
Okay, great. All right, so I got these sections, and at the end of each section, I've got a little question and answer. So you don't have to hold your questions till the end. You just, each section. But if there's anything you really want to know, that's why we haven't muted you all. Feel free to jump in. So for us, and, we've learned this the hard way, that there really is like a spot where you need to be. This is sort of the shoot the engineer. If you're trying to make it perfect, you're going to get diminishing returns after it. And you spend, and then it starts to go up. And when you're talking about the levels of learning, that to us, this is our level 2, level 3. Our level 2 tends to be what the industry calls level 3. So for us, a level 3 includes dynamic branching. So that if you make a mistake, we don't tell you right away. We let you dig yourself into a deeper hole, but we also allow you to try to get your way out of it. And at the end, you might not have found the perfect path, but you learn from your mistakes, especially recovering. And then we like to do a practice environment. So we're trying to build learning where people get to practice. And it's just sort of funny that if you think about a sport like golf, the people who practice the most are the people who are the best at it. After they're the best. So the people on the PGA Tour practice. And the people that can use the practice tend to maybe go on the putting green for 5 minutes before they tee off, and that's about it. So we're really focusing on practice. And so we think that if we're figuring out the best way to get people to practice and we let them own their own learning, we could find a place to be in here. So we actually have, I think there's a hashtag best return on your dollars. And Rich, did we create a white paper? Did Ethan create one on this? I'm trying to remember.
I believe so. That was one of the other ones I'm gonna try and pull out and put onto that our focus landing page. That and a few other things that we discussed. So it'll be there as a resource.
Okay. So this is just kind of explain that, and then moving down. So Dr. Allen's got a lot of great quotes, and one of the ones I like is 2 things you can't teach: what a student doesn't want to know and what they already know. And you'd be amazed at how much training is out there that has to focus on this. There's also what they don't need to know. And so whenever we try to focus on what we're going to build, we actually go through a triage process and we try to throw things away. A great example, lens crafters. They were trying to teach people how to make and ship eyeglasses. They had a lot of damage when they were making the glasses, and they shipped them to the wrong place. And they wanted to teach the anatomy of the eye. So basically, could you please tell us the mistake they're going to make at grinding and installing the lenses and shipping it if they don't know what a retina does? If you can't answer the question, then maybe you shouldn't focus there. So, and then if it's something that they don't think is valuable. I loved in college that, I took math in college. It was very practical, but in high school, I remember spending weeks and weeks, because I took calculus, on this equation to find out what the derivative was. And then after all that time, they said, well, 3x squared, you take the 2 times the 3, it's a 6, and you subtract 1 from the 2. Like, well, what was that b squared minus b over 2ab, whatever thing? Oh, we were trying to get the concept. Will I ever need that again? No. So we try to be sure that we don't waste students' time. So the number one thing about return on investment is focus what you are going to build instruction around. And then I have some additional slides that talk about how we do it. So, I like to stop from time to time. So if any of you have been involved in something in hindsight, you went, we probably covered too much stuff. We probably taught stuff to people that they felt they already knew, and we kind of lost them. They kind of got bored, and then they were in a hurry, or they just didn't seem like they needed to know. They weren't bought in. They felt like we were shoving it down their throats. Anybody have any stories of that on the call? Oh, someone's going to have to give me a story, even if it's a short one.
Mine is, right now I'm working with a government client, and they want these new hire employees to basically know all the policy about the, their entry tasks that they're doing,
Okay.
and trying to help them come to grasp with the concept that there is no way these new hires are going to know all this government policy, all of this, all the ins and outs, to be able to sign somebody up. It's just, we're actively struggling with that. And I think part of the issue, and maybe you have an opinion on this, or maybe you'll touch on it later, is that they're trying to solve a business process issue with training. And the training's not going to fix their business process.
No.
Spending more money on developing the training isn't going to fix it either.
No, and them wanting to know it, I think, is huge. And we had something we did for Yahoo years ago, and we called it Sue or Settle. And we said, you are general counsel, and the government has hit you with 10 fines. And you either need to settle with those fines, meaning when you researched, did the people at your company actually violate policy, that you should take the fine and run? Or do you want to take them to court? Because you have proof that they didn't violate policies and you think the government's making a mistake. Now, if you take it to court and your people actually did do a mistake, well, then the fine gets doubled or tripled. And so you take that risk. And in the researching, you're focusing on the consequences, and you're seeing, oh my goodness, being that they did that, it's going to cost the company 500 grand, or you get to see, you lost so many customers or something. And they are being trained that violating policies have serious consequences, and they know they can't remember them, but the training has them go and look things up and try to find what area of policies, should they have been using. The due diligence side, were they in 100% compliance, due care versus due diligence, those kinds of things. And then you would create a report and say, here you go. Now, what we didn't do is focus on every single policy. We got people going, you know what, before I make a choice, I think I better look up the policy. We did that with United Airlines as well. They wanted us to simulate every aircraft in their fleet with a 3D model. They said, we just need to do one. We need to have the flight attendants go through a safety procedure, and we're going to have them try to do it without their flight manual. And then when they can't, they forget things, we'll say, here's your manual. And every time you do something, you have to tell us what page of the manual the answer was on. And then they realized, you know what? I'm actually supposed to be following the manual. I'm supposed to be having the manual in my hand as I'm doing my safety check. And they felt, I've been doing it for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. But they didn't, and United Airlines got fined. So that's one way of getting them to want to know, is showing them, like, one, there's no way you can memorize everything. But we want you to know that it's out there, and you should go look things up before you decide what to do. And there's consequences. So even though they might change, at least they'll say, you know what, before I take action, I'm gonna look at the policy manual. Don't know if that's helpful or not, but we're doing more and more of that. And we're convincing companies that if we have enough situations and they end up going, it's kind of like a cheat manual in a game, that we can reduce how much the training costs, because we're not copying and pasting every single policy on the screen, and we're not trying to come up with questions with the right answer and then come up with distractors. We'd rather come up with a situation and say, did this person follow policy or not? Where did they go off on the policy? What do you think a consequence would be? And where is this policy in the manual? And then, the training takes less time, but you got to get the people to buy in and not have I want 2 hours of training. I'm not have a clock on it. Like, well, you do know that while the audio is playing, they're checking email, right? And then the minute the audio is done, they hit the next button. And when they get the quiz, they're guessing. And then after taking it once, they get it right on the second try. So you have to have, if there's someone with the compliance, or you have to prove that it's going to work. I know a lot of subject matter experts say, I want to see every word on the page. But if you could say, you know what, it's like a game, they will read every page in the cheat manual. They give them enough situations, especially if it's covered on more than one page. Then you say, select all the pages that apply. They will read every page you give them as a possibility. So you end up getting them reading 5 pages of the manual each time to answer, where is this covered? So is that at all helpful?
Yes, thank you. Very interesting.
Okay, great. All right. So for us, as I was saying, we want to triage. We want to focus on the KPIs, and that's the idea of lens crafters. If you're trying to get them to not break lenses, glasses, and you're trying to get them to ship, then I'm not training anything that I can't prove is directly related to the business needs. Now, for us, being built on future technology, there was, I don't know how many millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions that was spent recently when Adobe just killed Flash and everyone had to convert Flash over. And what a lot of people did is they just went overseas and had it rebuilt, but they weren't taking the fact that tablets and phones, and they also weren't taking into account that if you're teaching software, more and more software is a service, meaning the screens change. The one way we've been able to save money if we're doing tech training is we're going with sandboxes. So instead of capturing all the screens and doing a simulation, and then we have to keep changing the screens, we see if there's any way to tie in to creating a training database and having people go through it. And we've actually looked into working with IT that says at the end of the transaction, could you give us the data? Like what are the values? What screen are they on? And then we know if they did it right or not just by where they landed. And if we can do that, then we don't have to keep updating the training because we're creating a sandbox. And then focus of learning on behavior enhancing tasks. If you give them a ton of stuff to read, or if you teach everything as though it's a fact to be memorized, they will forget it. And that's the whole idea of practice. And then just Allen interactions, we beat you over the head with a couple things. And one of them is meaningful, memorable, motivational, and measurable. And when we measure, we're not talking about a smile sheet at the end of training. Did you like it? We want to provide a form where managers, supervisors, QA, whoever can look at how people are doing it 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months later. We would love to have a control group that is doing it the old way and show that our learning is improving. But when we focus on that, we end up training oversight, meaning if you're going to be having someone go through training, the person who is watching them needs to know what they were trained on, not necessarily go through the whole thing. But what happens is people go through the training and then no one around them is doing it that way, or they tried it and it didn't work and they think the training is showing them how to do something that's too hard or too long, or there's a shortcut. Pretty soon they're trying to use common sense instead of best practices. So you can spend a whole lot of money, and I think someone said this, to teach them all the facts, but if they easily give up on the training or they think they know better, and our research shows when people go off and stop doing best practices, it's not because they forgot the training, it's because they thought they knew better. The most expensive training you'll ever build is the training that doesn't work. And so they could know everything in the training and choose not to use it. So we really want to create something where, this is a Steveism. It's the try it, trust it. Actually, it's trust it, try it, stick to it. So one, we want to create in learning. I don't want to tell you the answer and then give you a question. I want to give you the question with a couple nuggets and let you try to find the answer. And if you get it wrong, like in those bar games where as time goes, they give you hints, but the hints are more clear and more clear, but you get less points the longer you wait, the more hints you get, that you eventually figure it out and you feel like, I wasn't told the answer and asked if I remembered it, I figured it out. If you provide a training environment where people are a partner in figuring out the right answer, then they will try it because they trust it, because they think it came out of their head. And if you make it in an environment that is authentic, where the job and the training are similar, then when they get on the job, they go, oh, wow, this is very similar to training. I'm going to try it. And then sticking to it, we make sure in training that even though they do everything right, sometimes it doesn't work out, because then in training we can tell them, look, it failed. The customer didn't buy. You didn't, you still had someone angry with you in compliance. You did the best you could. But you know what? This is going to happen in life. And I want in training to tell you, don't give up. Like, even if you do everything I tell you, there's still going to be bad consequences. Everything isn't going to work out. But then I get to tell you that you just stick with it. And more often than not, it'll work. All right, Rich, I see a couple things in the chat. Oh, it was just you saying if you have a question.
That's me.
You
Yep.
can put it in the chat. Okay. So anyone have any questions on sort of this? All right, I'll move along. So the next thing that we've got is for Dr. Allen, it's doing the right thing at the right time, not knowing what you should do. So again, that leans towards us designing practice environments and making sure that they choose to do it. And a follow-up question, why did you choose to do that? What would the consequences be? To us, that's great feedback because we make sure they weren't guessing. We also like to tempt people, like selling cars. There's a button that says go to the sales manager, and it's there the entire time because there's a right time to do it. But we want them to think, should I do it now? Did I do it too soon? Did I do it too late? We have a button that says go ahead and give them their monthly payment. And you can choose to do that anytime. But you're in a conversation because they don't like how much you're giving them a trade-in. But we want to give you all of the things that could get you off track. So we think if you build a good training environment that tempts the student, you don't have to prepare them to have them avoid making mistakes. We actually want to have more opportunities for the student to make mistakes so we can ask them, why did you do that? Kind of a Socratic method. And then we say, well, this would be the consequence of doing that. This is the pro, this is the con. Do you still really want to do that? Because now they're focused on the reading. And it takes a lot less text to do that than a big, long narrative, so that when they're given the situation, then you go, well, they should make a mistake now because I spent 20 minutes making sure that they would avoid mistakes. Well, we found that it costs less time and takes less time. Well, it costs less money and takes less time to design training where you kind of throw them in. First, you start like at the shallow end, and then you get deeper and deeper in situational, and then give them the information when they get it wrong instead of 20 pages to make sure they never make a mistake. All right, in the chat, Rich, was that a question? Oh, type in here so we follow up. That's still you. And here, the next one. So for us, when we're creating that learning interaction, and this is going from micro view to macro view, is we have learned that that learning experience isn't all by itself, that you have to determine, are you putting this on an LMS? The big thing for us is content and content libraries and also learning libraries. But, I don't want to spend much time on this, but just for us, one way we can save money is if we know, if the LMS is only going to keep track of certain things, like how long did they take, what score did they get, and this is how we're scoring, our question is going to be, what are you going to do with the data? And are you going to do that for continuous improvement? Should you be doing micro-learning? That one way of saving money is if you don't have one of these platforms that's going to do something with your data and give you some insights, then you might be expecting too much out of where you host your training. And all you know is they got an 85% on the test. So sort of how many tries do they get? Do you lock them out after 2 tries? Are you keeping track of how long it took them to answer the questions? Are you figuring out that everyone's making the same mistakes and maybe it's not a problem with the students, it's a problem with the question? So just for us, all the new tech that's going on in here is it's more than just the interaction on the screen. It comes to how that provides data. Again, if you have training out there that's not working, that's not return on investment. And these kind of tools can help you refine that training. So it's like they do with software. They throw out a version and then they wait for people to report bugs and then they update it. So you're getting these constant updates. So learning could be that way. You could get a minimum viable product, get it out, pilot test it, then get out one, but save some of your money for refinements instead of trying to make it perfect. And these types of systems help you by providing data to improve the training. So again, this is sort of the tech side. I don't want to spend much time on it, but anybody have any questions about this?
We have a comment.
Okay.
Of course, I didn't
In
read it
chat.
yet.
Yeah, while it makes less time to develop using Socratic, what is your learning time? Okay, with the learning time, you have to have people that buy into the fact that some people might take 10 minutes and some people might take an hour. So with the Socratic method, if they're able to get it right and they're able to give you why they chose that, what the consequences would be, you can let them move on. And if they don't know, then you provide them the information, and those people are then given the learning the minute that they're not able to succeed at practice. So it's sort of like you put them in the pool, and if they're flailing about, you might want to then, it's like, I'm standing there, I'm going to let go of you. And if you start to sink, I'm going to grab you and then I'm going to put floaties on your arms. But if you're able to float, you're able to swim, then I might just need to adjust your stroke. So it's sort of like putting them in and deciding how much that they need. So the training time goes down because people are only getting information on what they don't already know. And they're more motivated because the less time they're in training, the more focused they are. And if they know they made a mistake and they agree that they need more, they're willing to read and learn. And if you're telling them something they think they know, they ignore it. They might not know it, but they think they know it. I tell like a diet program that says, oh, I know how to lose weight. Great. So have you been on the diet? No. So there's something more there. It's, I need to learn that. And if you say, look, I'm going to give you this diet plan, I'm going to come back in a month, and if you lost weight, then I know you know how to stick to a diet, but I need you to try. And then, okay, you're on this diet, you didn't lose weight or you gained weight, so let's find out what the problem is. Do you need to learn about discipline? Do you need to learn that you don't really understand the diet? Do you not understand the consequences of cheating? It might be a bad analogy, but we'd rather put someone, give them the information, let them try it and see the result, then find out why they ended up there, and then only focus on training them on the mistakes they made. So hopefully that answers your question. It does cost less and take less time to build, but it also makes it truly self-paced. Where everyone says that e-learning is self-paced, well, just because you click a next button faster than someone else doesn't mean it's self-paced. All right, moving along. And then this is what I've been talking about is we like to design all training where we give them a situation that's like the job. Like this is what you're going to be in a situation for compliance. We'd say, all right, we did something for MasterCard. You've got to create an ad campaign, but you're doing it in the EU and there's all kinds of rules and regulations. And, you're going to be focusing on a target audience that likes sports. So, you got to go out and figure out who your figurehead, who your spokesman's going to be. And then you've got to figure out what you're allowed to say. And if you're able to make promises, especially if it's MasterCard and financial, you got to be really careful. So we're having you create this entire ad campaign. And then after you create it, you have to go and find places and then assign, this is high risk, this is medium risk, this is low risk, this is no risk, why or why not, how would you adjust it, that kind of thing. And we're not giving you all that information up front. So we put you in a meaningful situation. The challenge is you've got to create it to where, no one is going to sue you. No one is going to prevent it from being rolled out. So we're kind of telling you like what it is you're trying to succeed at. Not that you have to get an 85 on the test at the end. And then how you use the mouse, the keyboard, the monitor, the speakers, a microphone sometimes, the webcam sometimes, to actually respond. And this is not just online, but it's even virtual instructor like now. And then the feedback is the consequences or user action and guidance. It might be follow-up questions that we're not going to tell you how to succeed before we throw you in a situation. We let you try it, make mistakes. We give you some guidance on how to avoid the mistakes. We think that every good learning experience should take 2 tries. If you got it right on the first try, you already knew it. So basically you test it out. But we assume students should at least need 2 tries. If they need 3 tries, and that meant that they skimmed the feedback, they clicked through it, and after they go the second time, like, crap, I still got it wrong, and they're going to slow down, read the feedback, internalize it, and then the third time around, they're going to get it right because they don't want to have to do it a fourth time. All right, let's see what's in the chat. Do you have any thoughts on creating engaging experience groups who don't have access to technology? Yep. So for Hilton, we were teaching them like breakfast bar, and they don't have laptops. They're in the kitchen, and we're also teaching housekeeping. So we did a lot of triad role plays where people got to be one, the manager, the supervisor, two, the person actually doing the job, and three, QA. That would then score and rank how that all went. We gave them a little scorecard, and then each person got to play one of those roles, and they go through different situations. We did it with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Microsoft brought them in as a cafeteria plan, and they were used to a traditional plan. So we actually created the game of life, and it was, like a cardboard cards kind of thing, and they got to choose. And how much of a spending account do I want? Do I want all the add-ons? How much do I want to spend? What my out-of-pocket's going to be? And at the end, you'd find out, like if you went to the gym and you got the discount, and then we could say, okay, let's go worst case, best case, and see how you would have done. We did all that for back then prior to COVID. It was live. So we did that for them.
And
again, for the go ahead, Rich.
Just to interject some other things, there's lots of examples, and I know you said not having technology, but we've also worked with Lowe's and Home Depot and Denny's, and all those people don't necessarily they're not working with technology, but they can be put into a training lab or a place where they're doing it. Also, even Steve has stories about Toyota Financial Services where they reduce their training time by weeks through like a blended learning thing that they did. But I also want to interject also for Marcus, but anybody else who's listening, is that a lot of the things that Steve's talking about, especially the CCAF concept, is what the Allen Academy is trying to put out there. And I know Burl's gone through the training, Ming's gone through some of this, that's where we're really passing along, and part of Dr. Allen's initial mission statement for Allen Interactions is enhancing the minds of people in the e-learning area. I don't have the mission statement done, but I always call them the Johnny Appleseed of e-learning, because we really want to teach everybody how to do effective learning. So I just want to add those in there, and Steve can jump on that too.
Yeah, well, being we have 8 minutes, I'm going to jump ahead. So one of the other things we do is, whether it's instructor-led or e-learning, is we create a learning library. So for online, we will create like a role play, but we'll create it in a way that can be reused. If we're going to do let's say a step-by-step procedure, we'll create a way to do it, and then we will have it accessing external data, whether it be out of a spreadsheet, a database, something, so that we can reuse it. Tools like Storyline and Captivate, you can build templates, you can copy paste, but if there's a way of doing it where the content can be externalized, then you can quickly and easily change it and reuse it. So even if you are using Captivate and Storyline, trying to templatize things to make them easier to reuse, then over time you build up a directory of learning objects. And then if you have something go, we need to teach someone how to prioritize. We need someone to rate a risk. We need someone to do a self-assessment. We need to assess somebody on did they follow the proper procedures and maybe have a Likert scale. Great, you've got those. Then when you go to design your training, you can see if any of those could become components or be used within it. So you go through, you analyze the design, and then you look at your learning libraries, see which ones you can use, and you can share them. And if different people are doing them and there's a central repository, some kind of a SIG, special interest group or a center of excellence, then you get to use them. So this is something that we've done with our HTML5 projects and clients, where we're building it. And I know it's a tech diagram, but it just shows that even when we do Storyline or Captivate, we are really trying to figure out how to create a learning library. And then when we get a new project, we look at that library. And we're not shoving, it's not product, it's not off the shelf. It's only if that makes sense. But if you need a wheel and you've got a wheel, you might as well use it. All right, move down. So this is, any questions on that? I know we asked through, but any additional questions on sort of our 30,000 foot view of some ways of sort of maximizing return on investment? Okay. I will move along to maximizing your resources. So when we're doing analysis of the audience, this is sort of what I was saying earlier is, who is your audience? What is their day in the life? Which responsibilities are most common? What is the most challenging? What are their performance gaps and pain points, and what motivates and discourages them the most? We're going to send this PowerPoint out to you, but we really focus on fault analysis. I bet there's people that were trained, they're still making mistakes, and if I know why, then I want to focus the training on that as opposed to broad knowledge. The training environment. How do they get trained currently? How it's administered? What is the culture around training? We've had some companies where you get out of training and then your managers immediately say, forget everything that you learned in training. And then they have someone that's QAing what they're doing and they're evaluating them using a different rubric than the trainers or the managers. And what's working so far and what isn't, and how will new training relate to existing ones? We kind of look at those. And then for success is, what does that look like? How is it measured? If you're going to be measuring success, like you're selling a phone, are you measuring on how many phones you sold today? Or are you measuring on how is your company in 3 to 6 months? Because if you're selling a bunch of phones and they're not serving the needs, then people are going to say this phone is terrible, I don't like it. And they're going to talk bad about the phone or your store or your company. And then the long-term consequences outweigh the short-term consequences of of phones out the door. So we want to know that. Why? Because we want to create learning that says the actions you take, let's do a time machine and let's go ahead 6 months. Do you think that, what do you think are going to be the impacts on KPIs of your decisions 6 months down the road, and get them thinking that way? And then what are your primary obstacles to success? And it might be executives, it might be customers, it might be the industry. But if those obstacles are going to come up, we want to train, not best case scenario, but we want those obstacles popping up to see how people can cope with them. Any questions on any of that? All right. Now, prioritization, we always start with the end. And what most people do is say, well, let's get all the facts done. And then we're going to see if we can do some situational stuff. And if we have any time or money left over, we might do a game. We start at the end and say, what is the absolute hardest thing for people to do? And we're going to build training on that. And if we run out of time and money, we're basically going to create what we call a scavenger hunt, where we ask them questions or give them situations. And we give them a PDF or websites, and we say, go find the answer. And when you come back, tell us where you found it. So we'd rather build the practical stuff first. And if we run out of time and money, it becomes a scavenger hunt game. We focus on the trouble spots. We try to reduce memorization, because these days stuff changes so much that it's just going to fall out. And we like to teach people how to fish. We want to teach them how to Google. We want to teach them who's the person to ask, where do I go, where to look in the manual, how do I make sure that I'm doing it right, how do I, before I submit or take action, go through and triage to make sure that there's not going to be any consequences. So when we're building our training, if we start with the end in mind, we're able to get more done because we get that out of the way. The other thing we do is we pilot test. If we create something that's authentic and students are able to jump in and they have enough, then we don't need to build all the enabling objectives. But if they do it and they go, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, then we build some enabling activities, then we pilot test. And then if they're successful, we stop. If they're not successful, we go down a step. So we start with the hardest, and then we keep building until our student population says, I can do this. I don't need to hold my hand. Most people start with hand holding when you don't even know if they need their hands held. And then for us, by determining what is the best modality, should this be, a game? Should it be a micro learning, a little awareness video? Should it be social? Should it be on the job training? Knowing that all this is out there, a lot of it would be easy to create something that, you could have a cohort, you could have people working together on projects. We found ways to get people more engaged through teamwork. And like with Exxon, we would create teams and they would go through in-class discussions. And now we're doing it on Zoom. And then we would give them the sim, and then they would all together try to decide, like the Supreme Court, what choice should I make? How much risk is it going to involve? Why did they make the choice? And then there's the dissenting opinion. Did anyone in your group disagree? Why did they disagree? But they do that as part of the class. Then they get back together, and then the instructor, the facilitator, goes through everyone's choices, and they talk through why they chose what they chose, and then they get to see the consequences. So it is a 5-day course. 5 hours is in sims. And so each day there are 2 half-hour sim sessions where they just try to apply. So they don't have to do this on their own. They're doing it as a group. So we're bringing a lot of different modalities in. And then, of course, if you haven't heard in the past, by us using an iterative approach, we make sure we don't waste our time building something that isn't going to work. We're building the activities, we're testing them, pilot testing them. Once we know the activities work, we do it with a slice of content, 5 to 10% of the content. So if we're going to do a role play, we build one role play and make sure it works before we build the rest. If we're going to create a way of training a step-by-step procedure or understanding compliance, we build one situation, we refine it, and then we use it as a model to then put the rest of the content in. So our approach is all about building the activities first and then putting in the content second. So iterative design is the activity, iterative development is the content. So content comes second, and that's how we're able to do it. All right. Any questions on that? I know we're now like right at time. I think the rest of the stuff is we put in a ton of case studies. So just so you know, there's a quick thing about, whenever people make requests, you need to say, if that's an absolute need to have it or nice to have, we basically say, look, we put 10% of the budget aside, and if someone asks for something, okay, but we're going to eat into that 10%, and when you run out, you don't get it anymore. So is this a need to have or a nice to have? If it's nice to have, we put it in a parking lot. And then you need to define the difference between stakeholders and swoopers. Swoopers are people who say, yeah, I trust you. And then at the end, they come in and say, you did all wrong. You got to start over. You need to convert swoopers to stakeholders, and they need to be reviewing it as you go. And of course, this is the duh moment, tight project management. And so the rest of the stuff is just, like case studies of, what we focused on. So I just wanted to include them, not that I wanted to cover them. So when we send this out to you, so that's what I had. So thanks for giving me the extra 2 minutes to get to the end.
And this is perfect. Thank you again, Steve. And thank everybody for joining. And I don't know what my topic will be in 2 weeks, but we're like bouncing around the ideas, and Dr. Allen's trying to move e-learning and get it more expressed as experience learning development, experience learning design type of things. So, and it's really e-learning can mean so many things.
Yeah, we're trying to get rid of the E and maybe put an X and call it X learning, because it used to be computer assisted instruction, then it was computer-based training, then it was web-based training, and now it's e-learning. But when it was e-learning, it encompassed simulations, micro-learning, and everything else. And now e-learning is a PowerPoint on steroids, and there's micro-learning, games, sims, mini sims. So there's so many subcategories.
So we may try and talk about that in a couple of weeks. So
okay.
All right.
Well, I'll let you guys get back to your day. Thanks for attending.
Thank you. Bye.